When does a Hollywood titan finally say enough and walk away from a late-night host who's crossed every line imaginable? Picture this. A legendary actor, 77 years old, sits down for what should be simple promotion and ends up delivering a lesson in dignity that leaves an entire studio gasping. Tonight, we're breaking down the incident that had Sylvester Stallone leaving Jimmy Kimmel's stage mid-broadcast, creating shockwaves across the entertainment industry. This is how a routine guest spot transformed into television's most unforgettable standoff. Before we dive deeper, tap that subscribe button for Briefing Bureau and comment your thoughts. Should stars tolerate disrespect just because the cameras are rolling? The night began routinely enough at the Kimmel taping. Stallone was booked to discuss his newest venture, and fans packed the seats, eager to see the action legend up close. Wearing an elegant dark suit, he strode on stage with trademark confidence, acknowledging the roaring crowd. He embodied everything audiences expect: presence, charisma, the aura of 5 decades in film. Jimmy Kimmel, though, appeared to have a different agenda waiting. Something shifted the moment Stallone settled into the guest chair. The standard hospitality, the professional courtesy, it evaporated. Kimmel's first words carried unexpected bite. "Sly, 77, right? Still pretending you can land a real hit?" Kimmel delivered this with a grin that felt hollow. Nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd, uncertain whether this was banter or confrontation. Stallone's face tightened subtly, but his reply stayed measured. "Jimmy, I've been in the fight game since before you learned punchlines, and here I remain." Applause followed, yet Kimmel's expression flickered with irritation before he continued. "Sure, but honestly, this whole tough guy persona, it's just performance art, correct? Everyone knows you're not literally the Italian stallion." An awkward hush blanketed the room. This wasn't typical late-night charm. It felt targeted, and the audience sensed it immediately. Stallone leaned back, eyes narrowing with that intensity audiences recognize from every iconic role. "Jimmy, perhaps you're mistaking me for someone else. I never claimed to be Rocky. I'm an actor, a screenwriter, a filmmaker. I built that character. Understand the distinction between embodying a role and taking pride in your craft." Kimmel wasn't retreating. In fact, he seemed encouraged by Stallone's calm. "Come on, Sly. Half your legend rests on this blue-collar warrior image. Yet you're relaxing in Beverly Hills Estates, removed from manual labor for decades." Dead silence. Entertainment had officially died. This was escalation. Stallone's jaw clenched. Years in Hollywood had taught him to recognize ambush interviews. "Jimmy, I came up in Hell's Kitchen. Dad cut hair. Mom read stars. We had nothing. I slept in my vehicle while chasing this dream. Rocky was written when I was broke and desperate, and I fought everyone to star in it when they said I wasn't leading man material. So before you lecture me about honest work, maybe check your facts. Check your facts before you question someone's journey." The room's tension became physical. Crew members exchanged glances. Audience members shifted uncomfortably. Yet Kimmel pressed ahead, seemingly blind to the damage accumulating. "Oh, please. Every artist claims the starving artist origin story. But let's discuss your actual reputation. Rambo, Rocky, roles where dialogue is minimal and grunting carries scenes. Not exactly Shakespearean genius, right?" That's when everything shifted in Stallone's bearing. The polished Hollywood diplomacy vanished. He sat forward, voice dropping to that unmistakable register from every classic film. "You know something, Jimmy? 5 decades I've devoted to this craft. Collaborated with cinema's greatest directors and performers. Written, directed, starred in movies generating billions and impacting millions of lives. And you're comfortable in your late-night bubble, believing you can dismantle someone whose accomplishments dwarf anything you'll ever touch. Kimmel attempted laughter, but discomfort bled through. Hey, relax. Just having fun here. Can't handle some ribbing. Ribbing? Stallone's voice gained edge. Jimmy, ribbing is humorous. What you're executing is attempting to devalue someone's legacy for cheap ratings. Frankly, it reflects your character, not mine. The host visibly floundered, realizing his usual tactics were failing. Look, Sly, no offense intended, just keeping things lively for viewers. Lively for viewers? Stallone rose from his seat, towering over the desk. Jimmy, these people didn't purchase tickets to witness you humiliate a guest. They came for entertainment, maybe insight, genuine connection. What you're delivering isn't entertainment. It's pathetic. Cameras captured everything. This unscripted, unprecedented confrontation. Nobody knew protocol. This wasn't rehearsed, and Kimmel was drowning. Sly, hey, sit back down. Let's just pivot to your new project. Kimmel was scrambling, confidence shattered. Stallone studied him, then slowly shook his head. You know what, Jimmy? I've survived long enough to recognize when someone's exploiting me for their own elevation. I'm too experienced, worked too hard, to sit here letting some talk show host who peaked reading writers' jokes treat me like target practice. The studio's silence became suffocating. Every attendee, every technician, every producer watching remotely understood they were witnessing history. This transcended celebrity drama. This was about respect, dignity, drawing boundaries, and one man refusing to compromise either for television convenience. Kimmel was sweating visibly, smugness obliterated. He glanced desperately toward off-camera producers, seeking rescue, but they were equally paralyzed. Live broadcast. No escape hatch. No reset button. Real consequences unfolding in real time, and Kimmel had authored his own disaster. Sly, please just sit and we'll redirect, Kimmel pleaded, voice climbing an octave. Dignity isn't negotiable, regardless of who's watching. But something in his tone suggested he wasn't finished. Pride, perhaps? The pressure of live television. Instead of graceful retreat, he made the catastrophic choice. You know what, though? Since we're being transparent, let's address the elephant here. Your speech, Sly. The whole mumbling situation. How many takes do your directors typically need for a single coherent line? They must adore working with you. Audible gasps erupted. Front-row audience members covered their mouths in horror. Kimmel had just mocked Stallone's speech impediment, something resulting from birth trauma and nerve damage. Beyond low, beyond cruel. Everyone knew it. Stallone's expression went absolutely still. The anger remained, but now it was ice-cold, controlled, lethal. When he spoke, the quiet voice somehow filled every corner of the space. Jimmy, you just committed your career's gravest error. You believe you're clever, edgy. What you demonstrated reveals exactly who you are, a bully. A small, insecure bully who derives satisfaction from attacking people who've genuinely accomplished something meaningful. Kimmel tried interrupting. Look, I was only... No. Stallone's voice sliced through like steel. Your turn to speak has ended. You've said plenty. Want to mock my speech? Let me educate you about my speech, Jimmy. Birth complications. Forceps damage facial nerves. That's the source of my speech pattern. That's why partial facial paralysis exists. And you know my response? Instead of accepting limitation or defeat, I transformed it into strength, used it to create characters that resonated with millions, inspired people. The studio achieved a silence so complete you could hear equipment humming. Kimmel looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him. This wasn't playful late-night television. This was a masterclass in dignity from someone who'd earned the authority to deliver it. But you wouldn't grasp that concept, would you, Jimmy? Because you've never overcome genuine adversity. Never fought for anything substantial. You received a television platform because you could recite jokes other people composed. Now you believe that grants you permission to ridicule someone's disability before a national audience. Kimmel's face had drained of color. Sly, I didn't know about the nerve damage. I swear I was simply... You were simply what? Being funny, Jimmy? Nothing humorous exists in mocking disabilities. Nothing entertaining about humiliating your own guest. Certainly nothing professional about tonight's behavior. The host was unraveling, searching the studio as though a lifeline might materialize. We can edit this segment. Start fresh. Edit this? Stallone's voice rose incredulously. Jimmy, this is live broadcast. No editing exists. Millions just watched you reveal your true character. They witnessed what you genuinely consider acceptable conduct. Kimmel was sweating heavily, styled hair plastering to his forehead. Please, Sly, I made a terrible mistake. I apologize. Can we please just... An apology? Stallone shook his head slowly. Jimmy, apologies don't erase actions. Apologies don't retract the fact you thought mocking disabilities was entertainment-worthy. You showed millions who you become when cameras roll and you believe consequences don't exist. The audience sat transfixed. This transcended entertainment. This was truth unfolding live, and many were recording, knowing they were documenting something that would echo for years. Want to know what's truly pathetic, Jimmy? I arrived tonight to discuss a project I'm passionate about. Connect with supporters, create positive energy. Instead, I got ambushed by someone who thought he could use me as a stepping stone for cleverness. Congratulations. You've definitely made yourself memorable tonight. Kimmel was desperately trying to regain footing. Sly, please. Let's breathe here. The audience adores you. I respect your legacy. Respect my legacy. Stallone's laugh was bitter and cold. Jimmy, if respect existed, you wouldn't have spent 10 minutes attempting to demolish it. If you respected me as a human being, you certainly wouldn't have mocked my disability on live television. So don't sit there pretending to discuss respect when you've demonstrated nothing but contempt since I walked out here. The atmosphere was suffocating. Band members exchanged nervous glances. Guillermo stared at the floor. Producers were probably experiencing cardiac events. This was supposed to be simple promotion, and instead it had become a public dissection of the host's character. 5 decades, Jimmy. I've weathered critics, rejection, doubters who claimed I'd fail. But never, not once in 50 years, has someone invited me onto their platform specifically to humiliate me. And the truly sad element? You believe this elevates you? You think audiences admire watching you bully a 77-year-old man? Kimmel frantically consulted his note cards as though salvation was written there. Sly, perhaps we started on the wrong footing. Wrong footing? Stallone's voice carried disbelief. Jimmy, you insulted my career, mocked my appearance, then ridiculed my disability. There's no wrong footing here, just wrong behavior. And I refuse to pretend your actions are acceptable just to preserve your show's flow. Cameras documented everything, every expression, every syllable. The control room was pandemonium, but cutting away wasn't an option. Live television at its most raw and unpredictable. Kimmel initiated this confrontation. Now he was drowning in consequences. Maybe we should break for commercial and regroup, Kimmel suggested weakly, grasping for any escape from the hole he'd excavated. Regroup? Stallone looked at him with something approaching pity. Jimmy, no regrouping exists. You revealed your authentic character tonight, exposed who you truly become when you believe you're untouchable. Millions witnessed it. No commercial break repairs that damage. The studio audience remained completely silent, absorbing every word. Some appeared uncomfortable with the conflict, but others were clearly supporting Stallone, nodding as he systematically dismantled Kimmel's behavior. This wasn't Celebrity Feud. This was a lesson in self-respect being taught in real time. Kimmel was visibly trembling, composure obliterated, sweat dripped, voice cracking as he made one final desperate attempt at salvation. Sly, I'm begging you here. Massive mistake. I'll do absolutely anything to fix this. Charity donations. Entire episode about your foundation work. Whatever you want. Stallone studied him for a long moment. For an instant, it seemed he might consider mercy. The audience held collective breath, wondering if this legendary actor might show compassion to a host who clearly didn't deserve it. But then Stallone's expression hardened again, and everyone understood Kimmel had pushed too far for redemption. Jimmy, you think this concerns charity donations? Believe you can write a check and erase this? This isn't about money. This is about fundamental human decency, something you clearly lack comprehension of. Kimmel was practically hyperventilating. Please, Sly, think about my family, my children. This could destroy my career. People depend on me. That's when Stallone's voice dropped to a deadly whisper that somehow carried to every listener. Your family, your children, Jimmy. What example are you modeling for your kids right now? What lesson are you teaching them about treating people? Because currently, millions of children are watching their parents' television sets and seeing you mock someone's disability. Is that the legacy you want leaving them? The words struck Kimmel like physical blows. He slumped backward, finally comprehending the full weight of his actions. This wasn't just a bad interview segment. This was a character-defining moment that would shadow him perpetually. And you're worried about your career? Stallone continued, voice gaining strength. Jimmy, I built my career from absolute zero. Faced rejection, mockery, people declaring I'd never succeed. But never once did I tear someone else down, attempting to build myself up. That's the distinction between us. When circumstances challenged me, I worked harder. When circumstances challenge you, you attack others. The studio silence was deafening. Even crew members had frozen to watch this masterclass in dignity and strength. Stallone was demonstrating authentic toughness, and it bore zero resemblance to throwing punches or action movie heroics. You know what, Jimmy? I've heard sufficient. Said what needed saying, and you've shown everyone exactly who you are. I don't need sitting here anymore being your punching bag while you attempt salvaging your reputation. Stallone began removing his microphone. The small gesture somehow carried enormous weight. The reality of what was occurring hit everyone simultaneously. He was actually departing, live on television. This wasn't publicity stunt or a scripted moment. This was authentic. Sly, no, please don't leave. Kimmel was begging now, all pretense of control evaporated. We can fix this. Make it right. Don't walk out on me, please. Stallone paused, microphone halfway detached, and looked directly at Kimmel. Fix this, Jimmy? The only way to fix this would be time travel and choosing to be a decent human being. Since that's impossible, I'm choosing to remove myself from this toxic situation. He finished removing the microphone and placed it gently on the desk. The small sound it made seemed to reverberate through the studio like a gunshot. You know what's genuinely sad, Jimmy? You had one of cinema's biggest action stars sitting right here, ready to entertain your audience and promote work I care about. Instead of seizing that opportunity, you chose attempting to tear me down. That's not just poor hosting. That's poor business. Kimmel was practically in tears. Sly, I'll get on my knees right here. Apologize to your face before everyone. Please don't do this to me. Do this to you? Stallone's voice carried amazement. Jimmy, I'm not doing anything to you. You did this to yourself. Every word spoken, every choice made, every boundary crossed, that was all you. I'm simply choosing not to participate in your circus anymore. The audience was completely mesmerized. Some were filming on phones, others stared in shock, but everyone understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a celebrity departing an interview. This was a statement about dignity, respect, and knowing your value. I want everyone in this audience remembering something, Stallone said, turning to address them directly. You don't have to accept poor treatment from anyone, regardless of how much power they believe they wield over you. Life's too brief to let bullies tear you down, whether they're in schoolyards or behind talk show desks. The audience erupted into applause. Not polite, expected applause of a television taping, but genuine, heartfelt applause for a man who had just stood up for himself, and by extension, for anyone who had ever been bullied or disrespected. Kimmel looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would intervene and halt this disaster from continuing. Security, is there anything we can do here? Security? Stallone laughed, but zero humor existed in it. Jimmy, what's your plan? Have me arrested for leaving your show? This is America. I can walk out of here whenever I choose, and that time is right now. He stood to his full height, adjusted his jacket, and looked out at the audience one final time. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm sorry you had to witness this instead of having a good time, but sometimes standing up for what's right matters more than entertainment. With that, Sylvester Stallone turned and walked toward the exit. Each step he took seemed to echo through the studio, and with each step, Kimmel looked smaller and more defeated. The cameras followed Stallone as he moved with the same confident stride he'd entered with. But now something else existed in his bearing, something that spoke to a man who had just drawn a line in the sand and stood behind it. Sly, please. Kimmel called out one final time, his voice cracking with desperation. Don't leave me like this. Stallone stopped at the stage edge and turned back one last time. Jimmy, you left yourself like this the moment you decided mocking my disability on live television was acceptable. I'm just refusing to stick around and watch you dig the hole any deeper. And with that, one of Hollywood's biggest legends walked off the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live, leaving behind a host who was visibly falling apart, and an audience that would never forget what they had just witnessed. The camera stayed on Kimmel as he sat alone at his desk, staring at the empty chair where Stallone had been sitting, the weight of his choices finally settling in. The studio remained silent for what felt like an eternity, everyone trying to process what had just happened. This wasn't just bad television. This was a moment that would be analyzed, discussed, and remembered for years to come. A moment when respect and dignity won out over cheap laughs and ratings, when someone with real power chose to use it to stand up for what was right rather than what was easy. So what's your take? Was Stallone justified in walking out when Kimmel crossed that line? Or should celebrities just accept whatever treatment they receive from talk show hosts? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to hit that like button And subscribe to Briefing Bureau for more incredible stories from Hollywood that you won't see anywhere else.